There's our bed set up for the night on our sky platform where we can watch the stars, watch some satellites going by. We hope it'll be a clear evening. And now we're just going to build a little stealth shelter around this part of the deck. Nice. This deck is looking with its booth or stealth shelter on top. Those branches are forming a nice dense covering there. So on this side, these braces have just added so much strength and they've straightened out. Those two horizontal braces on this side do the same thing. They make it so much, they open out. So look at this beautiful, beautiful stealth shelter under which our bed is. Let's just try and reverse out and show you. So there's our bed, and look at that stealth shelter. Oh wow, made out of palm fronds, easing out, just looking so good. Wow, 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 it's going to be a great night tonight. It really cheers one up to be outside stealth camping on a beautiful day. I sometimes wonder, I always used to throughout my life camp, but I just wonder how I would take to regular camping again, whether I would enjoy it as much with all the busy ablution blocks and lots of people and the relative civilization compared to, say, stealth camping. I think I would just prefer to go and find a little area where one can just pull off the road and camp. I think it's great for one's peace of mind and one's mental state to get a bit of sun, to be out in the outdoors. Nature's non-judgmental. Doesn't really matter. You're not thinking about what other people are thinking. You're just enjoying being out. I've been looking into the harmony of the Gospels, and especially towards the end of Christ's ministry, where the people are really beginning to love or hate him. Common folk love him, the Jews hate him. Should I say the Pharisees? And it's so interesting to read the harmony because it puts things into perspective why that is so. For one thing, towards the end, Jesus has raised Lazarus from the dead. And after he'd been buried and in a tomb for over 3 days, can you imagine, and this is in Bethany, close to Jerusalem, can you imagine the celebrity status of that? And the Jews are beginning to, the high priestly caste are beginning to feel really threatened because it made a huge impression to have a person who's dead wrapped up in bandages, come out of the grave 4 days later. So this happened just before the end. And then Jesus was arguing with the priests more and more, and the Pharisees more and more, and telling them woe to them and telling them why they're so incorrect. Remember, John the Baptist had called the Pharisees a bunch of vipers and told them to, when they came to be baptized by him, to bring forth fruits worthy of repentance. So John didn't like them either. They were just coming to be, because it was the popular thing that to be baptized by John. But now he was perceived as a real threat to them because of his popularity. And they felt he just had to say the word and the Pharisees might be out of a job, because he had so much influence with people. Pharisees weren't to know that Jesus wasn't after their job. So towards the end now, Lazarus is like a living billboard for the power of Jesus. And Jesus comes in eventually from Lazarus's home where he lived with Mary and Martha. He gets a donkey and he makes a triumphal entrance into Jerusalem. This is so different from the previous year at Passover, where he just quietly sort of slunk in. Because now Jesus knows he's got nothing to lose. He has decided to give up his life. And now he's going to rub his presence into the noses of the Pharisees. So he's not going to, he knows that they're going to take him, so he's going to give them every opportunity. And this coming in as in this triumphal procession where the people lay down palm fronds and shout Hosanna and so on. And he comes triumphantly into Jerusalem. They hated that. They hated the fact he'd raised Lazarus earlier on from the dead. They hated the way he cleansed the temple again. This was at the last Passover as he came into Jerusalem. Because he hadn't done that the previous year, he'd done that the first Passover. So this was messing with the priestly income and the priestly authority. So he also said, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, and he laid into them in all manner of forms why they such hypocrites and why they break the law in their traditions and how their father's the devil. Don't forget, Jesus is saying he's the light of the world. That the God is his father, that he's saying all these things, that people must eat of him, tear down this temple, I'll rebuild it in 3 days. He's saying all kinds of people must eat of him. I mean, this so offended people, the Jews of that day, if you took it literally. So they just could not bear him. Because this was not what they expected of the Messiah. He was just not part of their scene at all. When Mary, that is Lazarus' sister, wipes Jesus' feet with this really expensive ointment, about 4 or 5 days before the crucifixion. This totally upsets Judas, who's always had a chip on his shoulder. He understands that, he's beginning to understand that Christ is not going to come into his kingdom yet. And so he's thinking, I gave up everything, and now look at it, and I've got nothing and no wealth, and look at Jesus, he's getting this expensive ointment put on him. He's not thinking that Jesus doesn't benefit from this ointment. So under the influence of Satan, Judas goes to the priests and makes a plan for 30 pieces of silver to betray Jesus. I think this happened 4 days before it. It was fulfilling a type of how the Passover lamb is chosen 4 days before Passover to be executed, and it's set aside to be executed from all other. And Judas was doing that with the high priests as well in tow. So this was fulfilling a prophecy that the lamb would be selected 4 days before. And that's what Passover lambs, what is done with them. So now the priests have the opportunity and they have the motive to kill Christ. And previously, at the previous feasts, they hadn't been able to arrest him because of his popularity with the crowd. So when Jesus is arrested and they try and bring witnesses to witness that all the things that make it worthy of killing him, they can't find any witnesses, and then eventually the high priest says, tell us, are you the Messiah? So if Jesus had just said nothing, no, if he just kept quiet, they wouldn't have had a charge to accuse him of. But when he says he is the Messiah, the high priest rips his coat and says, okay, this is blasphemy. Now the whole process is set in motion to put Jesus to death. So Jesus laid down his life, and he had the power to take up his life again. He said that power, that authority, that decision was given to him of the Father, that he could do it. And you could see Jesus does lay down his life voluntarily, because when Pilate asks him for a defense, he says nothing. So he speaks when he condemns himself with the high priest. He says nothing to save himself from Pilate, and he says nothing to save himself from Herod, who both find him innocent. They find nothing wrong with him. So all the things that Jesus had testified about the Pharisees, how they were, all their faults, had now that they had him in their power, they were determined to do the worst to him. And so they had this opportunity now with Judas. They arrest Jesus quietly on an evening in the middle of the night. This whole kangaroo court takes place. Most of the people who are baying for Christ's blood are friends of the high priests. They are, I doubt, the average person who'd been healed, I doubt even the same people who had laid down their coats and palm branches 4 days earlier when he made a triumphal entry into Jerusalem. So this is the reason why they eventually had Jesus. Jesus gave up the power. I mean, obviously Jesus could have changed where he wanted to sleep. He could have called Judas Iscariot out, but he tells Judas Iscariot at the Last Supper, go and what you do quickly. So Christ is determined, and this has been determined by God and Jesus since the ages, that he would come as the sacrificial lamb for the world and die. And so all these prophecies are being fulfilled. How he would be lifted up, how his side would be pierced, how his hands would be pierced, how they would offer him vinegar and gall, how they would pluck his beard, how his face would be more marred than any man, So these are all prophecies how his friend, my familiar friend, has betrayed him. And my God, why have you forsaken me? These things are all being fulfilled one after the other on that particular day, how he would be counted among the sinners. So he's crucified with sinners on either side. So it's not like anything caught Jesus by surprise. Well, maybe his father forsaking him at that last moment on the cross caught him by surprise, but the whole process he was willing to go through. So it's not like the Pharisees had him in their power without his consent. As he told Pilate, you'd have no power over me unless it was given to you from above. So Christ had the power to lay down his life, and he had the power given to him by the Father to take it up again. So as I say, it's just interesting to see from a harmony of the Gospels how all the events of the end time are playing together, and how Jesus now, from being very hidden and secretive at the feast, is now open and in their face and chasing people out of the temple and coming in on a donkey, and people are shouting Hosanna. Everything's coming to the attention of the scribes and Pharisees, and he's calling them out and telling them how rotten they are. Everything is now working together, and all it required was, God had predicted and foreordained that there would be a man of sin, a familiar friend who'd betray him. And so all those events took place. I just think it's amazing. I think, wow, can you imagine undergoing a beating like that? That could scar you for life. And yet Jesus, when he's resurrected, he's totally fine. He's on the cross, he's forgiving his enemies. He's talking kindly to the thief on the cross. He's talking kindly to John and his mother. And wow, it's just, and he's forgiving these people who are crucifying him. Wow, it's just amazing how he wasn't totally messed up and scarred. But you can see that when he's resurrected, he's totally fine. So, interesting reading, a harmony of the Gospels. So, I've got my beautiful shelter. It's a sunny, hot day. I'm in the shade. I've just enjoyed a lovely meal. I'm going to have a lovely stew. This was just the hors d'oeuvre. I love this flatbread. Beautiful sunny day, as I say. Just everything just cheers you up. And then tonight I'm going to sleep so comfortably. A slatted thing like this would be horrible to lie on, but with a airbed, beautiful. And above all the creatures, you don't have to worry about things crawling over you. I'm going to be able to see the stars. I'll lie further out where I can see the stars. This is beautifully covered. It's stealthy. This is night number 4 of, this is my 4th shelter, is it? Yes, 4th shelter. So, I hope you're enjoying all these shelters. Every day I've got 3 more to make, and we'll make those 3 in the next 3 days. So, thank you for watching.